All right, I think it's working. We're going to go ahead and kick off this. Hey, thank you very much. This work study. It is 5:01 on the 26th of August. And we're going to jump into an insurance update first. This is going to be presented by Katie Henry from USI. Hey, Katie. You can turn that mic on there.
Recording in progress.
Right into it. Okay, so first of all, I just want to thank everybody for all of your hard work over the last couple months. We started in a position where we were asked to replace the insurance program. I think everybody's had a lot of questions about this, and it's been a big topic for Marysville. So the process went very smoothly. We replaced the program. Things went very well, and the team was just absolutely wonderful to work with. So I can't thank everybody enough for the hard work that everybody's done to get us here. So everybody has a packet in front of them. This is probably more detailed than we need to be for this meeting, but I think it's good to go through line by line. It's better to probably go over a higher level on each of these, which is fine. So if we want to just start probably on page. Let's start on page 9, which is general and auto liability. Everybody can meet me there. Okay, so general liability and auto liability. This is coverage for bodily injury or property damage to others, anything that you're potentially liable for, as well as auto liability, which of course is car accidents. So this is pretty standard. This is the very general insurance. This is placed through Gemini, which is a Berkeley public entity company. This is where the base layer, the primary layer is covered. And this is essentially where most of the claims are going to land. Did you have a question? I'm looking at you. Sorry. So this is really the standard insurance. This also covers most of the contractual liability. If any contracts are signed with vendors, typically they're going to ask for what the general liability coverage is provided. They'll have very specific standards for financial rating and AM Best rating, which we will go over at the end. So coverage bound here for an annual policy. That's very typical for insurance. They're 12-month policies. So September 1st, 2024 through 25. I'll pause here. Any questions on this layer? No? Okay. So we'll keep going. So under the base layer, there's going to be an excess policy. So essentially the primary layer is the first $1 million of coverage. There's an excess policy placed on top, which is placed with Lexington Insurance Company. So this is that next layer of coverage to cover anything in excess of that $1 million limit. So this coverage is $2 million. That is the limit of insurance, and it is extended over $1 million base layer, which was with Gemini, which is Berkeley public entity. That also covers auto liability and employer's liability. So there's excess limits all over the entire liability program. Pause again. Any questions here? Okay. So the next coverage is going to be educators' legal liability. This is where errors and omissions in any sort of educational process. So failure to educate, anything that would really cause a financial loss to the injured party. So this is also where the board is covered under educators' legal liability, as well as the employment practices liability, which is claims for employment-related laws. So hiring and firing, if you can think about it that way. So this coverage is placed with Westchester. Again, an annual policy, 12 months. So we'll look at this again next year. Coverage is in force at a $2 million limit. And again, I will pause here because this is a pretty complex coverage part. I know there's probably going to be some questions, but if it's very, very specific to the policy wording, we can answer those later as well. Each of these policies are hundreds of pages, so I probably can't regurgitate the whole thing. But just from a high level, this is where the board is covered. This is where errors and omissions is covered. And this is where employment-related practices is covered. Okay, so continuing through, again, there's an excess layer placed over the primary layer with RSUI indemnity for an additional $3 million in coverage. This is pretty standard, placing up to the $5 million limit. So the next policy form is for abuse and molestation related liability, which is an unfortunate conversation to have. These are claims that we've seen pop up throughout the country, not specific to any specific district, but it's unfortunate that these circumstances arrive. So there's insurance coverage specifically for this. We placed a $5 million limit with Beasley, who is the carrier for this coverage part. The great thing about Beasley, and something that we're going to do really well throughout this next year, is utilize the resources that come with Beasley as an insurance company. So Presidium is a program that is provided through the carrier for no additional charge. It's included with the coverage. So it's something that they allow you to use, understanding that it's going to improve claims performance, which also improves the safety of our communities. It gives a perspective on how to look for behaviors that could potentially be problematic. And it just helps everybody from an overall standpoint protect the community. Because if we're all in this together, the kids are going to be taken better care of. So it's just a next level of risk management, of which, when I came here, the last board meeting, we talked about what are we doing over the next couple months? It's how do we establish a safety culture? How do we establish enterprise risk management? And a lot of that means that we are going to be utilizing these additional services. We are going to be leaning into some of these resources that are provided through these carriers to create a safer environment for the kids and our employees, and really anybody who comes into the district. So very positive with Beasley.
Hey, Katie, before we move
Yep.
forward, jumping back to the educator's legal liability.
Yes.
I know one of the questions that we had was about our school nurses and kind of where they would be covered. Would it be under this policy or someplace else?
So that's actually covered under the general liability.
Okay.
So that is, it's an interesting question. So I can get really high level or really in depth with insurance. It's either under the general liability, it's either included or excluded. So general liability back in the day, 30, 50, 60 years ago, general liability covered everything. It just covered all liability. Throughout the years, different claims have popped up that created trends for the insurance carriers. And what that does is they start to exclude coverages that are becoming a trend because they don't want to pay for the claims. If they're really, really high claims, they want to separate those out and charge an additional premium for those types of claims so that they can make money. Insurance companies are for-profit companies. I think I see a couple nods in the audience about that. So what happens is they start excluding coverages there, and then once those are excluded, specialty products are created to cover the different exposures that would be excluded under the general liability policy. So with nurse professional liability, that's a different one. That's kind of why I went down that tangent, because it is coverage that is still picked up under the general liability. It's professional liability is excluded under the general liability, except if you are a school nurse, which is strange and random, and insurance is very interesting, but that is where it's covered. So while it doesn't make sense, it is what it is. So nurses are picked up under the general liability for limited medical malpractice. The idea is that nurses are acting as school nurses. They're not acting as physicians diagnosing and prescribing medications. So that's probably too detailed, but that's okay. Any other questions? That's a great one. No, okay. So we'll keep going here. So the next coverage that we're purchasing, which I think is very positive, is it's called deadly weapons protection. This is coverage that covers for active assailant. So think of anything other than a fist. If it's a fist, it's not covered under a deadly weapons policy. If there's anything in your hand, if there's a car, if there's a gun, if there's Anything that is considered a weapon is included. This is picked up under a deadly weapons program, which is, again, it's another layer of coverage that is, I won't say it's excluded under the general liability, but there are different coverages that are required for a situation. So a program like this expands the coverage offering to provide things like counseling services for employees and students if there's anything that happens. It covers for business interruption if you lose students because of an incident. It picks up additional coverages that are not provided, but the most important thing that's provided by this program is the resources, the preventative resources that they bring to the table. They come in and they actually coach the leadership team, and they coach anybody who's going to be making decisions in an incident situation on what do you do? Because really the first thing that you have to think about in a situation like that is, what do you do? Who do I call? How do we inform the parents? They're going to see things on the news. You know, how do we get in front of this? And how do we make the community feel safe in this horrible situation? And that's really hard. Like, I just want to acknowledge that this is hard, really, really hard stuff. So when you can come in and you can have a program that is in place and people are trained on what to do when bad things happen, and you know in the moment how you're supposed to respond, things go better. Kids are saved. Families are saved. I mean, it's really, really important. So this is something, again, it's included in this program. So we built out this piece. This is not something that was really included in the program last year. So this is something that was really good that came out of this situation. We are expanding coverage and we're expanding resources in these areas where we just didn't have these resources before. So really, really positive stuff. I'll pause here. It's a heavy topic, but I do want to answer questions. Anybody?
Well, you said this wasn't included before. Are there any other things that you added this year that were not included before, or were there things
Yes.
included before that you decided to eliminate for any reason?
We did not eliminate any coverages, but you teed me up to the next coverage part. So yes, we did add additional coverages. The next coverages that we offered that are in addition to what was not included in the program last year is student accident coverage, which is a base coverage and then a catastrophic coverage. There's also included coverage for volunteers if volunteers get injured. That was not included in the program last year. So what that means is if a student gets hurt for any reason, nobody's at fault. They just fall and get hurt, or they're playing sports and they get injured in a sports game. It's nobody's fault. But, you know, we need coverage for medical. I mean, you know, somebody's hurt, there's medical bills, and of course they need help. So this coverage allows the district to help students that are injured and need help, and families need help paying the medical bills, because we all know it's hard, right? So this is an additional layer of coverage to protect the district. It's also to protect the kids. And the volunteers, because if you're volunteering out of goodness of your heart and you get injured, you know, you want help paying for those medical bills. And, you know, everybody thinks of workers' compensation coverage if you're injured as an employee. Well, volunteers don't get that in the state of Washington. So it's coverage where you can have some assistance in medical bills if you're working for the district. Question?
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. They do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's $100 deductible. So pretty affordable, in most cases, I would say. So essentially what that means is if somebody's hurt and they go to the doctor, there's going to be a medical bill. If the bill is submitted to the district and the district says, yes, we want to cover the medical bill, it's covered. As long as it's within the coverage limits, which in this case, there is a $50,000 base layer and there's a $5 million catastrophic layer. So if medical bills exceed $5 million, you know, we won't have additional coverage for that, but that would be a extremely catastrophic issue if that were to happen. So, you know. And then for the volunteers, it's the same thought process. It's a $25,000 limit. So there's the other layer of that. If a student's hurt and the district is for some reason liable, this is a no fault coverage. Nobody has to be at fault for this coverage to apply, which is why it's so important. In general liability, the district has to be liable for the loss, for coverage to apply, for coverage to trigger. So again, this student accident, it protects the kids at, there's no liability necessary. Nobody has to be at fault. Yeah.
So then if we take that one, create policy for how we benefits or.
Mhm.
Start saying, hey, we're not doing this for our. Students and, yeah. I'm just saying like that's not.
No.
All that.
No, absolutely not. That's what it's there for. Absolutely. And then again, I mean, we have a full team of people behind each of one of these policies. I'm just one person representing a lot of different coverage parts. If we want to do a deeper dive into any one of these coverage parts, including the accident coverage, I think that's a great idea. I mean, the whole point of me being here and the team, USI being here and working with Marysville is so that we're working on these things together as a team. We're partners. So how do we bring resources to Marysville? How do we talk about this stuff? And really, how do we deep dive into this? Because really, we just want to create a safer environment. So if that means that you understand the policies better and you can inform parents and students on what's available, that's great. I think education is key in all of this. So that's a great idea.
I think, I know you said, if a student gets hurt and they bring the district their medical bills, then the district, decides whether or not, that's gonna be submitted to our insurance.
Mhm.
I think if that's the case, who sets the, who, I guess, gets to determine, what types of medical bills, go through this policy? And if it is on the school district to determine that, I think, before we start doing this, we should have a kind of a robust system in place so that we're not serving some students and perhaps not serving other students, for similar situations that take place, because I think that has the possibility to open us up to, kind of legal liability in the future too. So
Yep.
I think it's great to cover students, especially and volunteers, especially if they get hurt on our premise, doing things for school. But I just want to make sure that we're careful on how we implement,
Mhm.
this policy.
No, it's a great point. AG Administrators is the third-party administrator that will manage the accident claims as they come in. So they have policies and procedures that have already been put into place, that we can share as an example, give to the board, and you can have a determination on how you want to proceed. So these are things that absolutely are great thoughts, and yeah, and we're kind of already in the process of doing some of this already. So again, it's great questions. Keep bringing these. And I would say too, if the board wants to be even more involved with some of these conversations, we can always set up deep dives. Whether it's talking about policies and procedures like this, which the carriers and the administrators and the risk management resources that come along with this always do have examples of policies and procedures that are put into place. That's a major part of insurance and risk management, is being prepared when something comes down the road. So that's a big piece of it, but also just in general, like, so we discover something every time we meet, right? And I think that's an important point too, is you guys bringing these questions, you guys bringing different perspectives and just being concerned, helps us to respond and do better. So, yeah. Okay. Let's keep moving. Next coverage part is property and boiler and machinery, and this covers the physical property and assets of the district. So, in examples like the freezing storm where a pipe leaked because of sub-zero temperatures that are, very strange for this region, caused property damage. This is where that coverage would be picked up. So we were able to include earthquake coverage and flood coverage, as well as the boiler and machinery. And then Travelers is the carrier for this coverage part. Anybody want to get into deeper detail on the property? Okay, so next is cyber liability. So cyber liability is coverage for network security and privacy liability. So privacy for students' information, for parents' information, for employees' information. You think of if somebody's hacked, if there's a cyber issue, this is where coverage is picked up, including business interruption. So the coverage is through Crum and Forrester. Again, it's an annual policy, and the limit purchase is $5 million. So this includes notification expense, and if there is any sort of breach, it's state law to notify anybody that's potentially impacted. So this would cover the notification expense as well. Okay, questions on the cyber liability?
Was this an added coverage, or is this something that we had covered previously?
This is a more robust coverage than what was provided previously. Additionally, and thank you for bringing that up, what will be covered and what will be provided as part of the carrier relationship with Crum and Forrester is network security detection. So what they do is they go in and scan the networks, they look for holes, they look for areas of vulnerability so that they can help us to fill in any gaps. So that's just included in the coverage. They'll come in and they'll do assessments, and they'll tell us if there's any areas where we need to, bring in security or improve security or make any changes. So, but they have very, very strict, appetite. So in order to even underwrite this policy, the district's in a very good spot. So I also want to outline that. And that's the same with all of these coverage parts. These carriers are very high rated. They're almost, they're the highest rated that you can get by AM Best with the largest financial stability. They don't underwrite insurance. They don't underwrite exposure that is poor. So again, I really want to emphasize that Marysville is in a very good position here, and they've had very, very strong companies come in and underwrite the program. So it's very impressive. The next coverage part is crime. Crime is, you think of the standard crime, burglary, employee theft, funds transfer, social engineering, pretty standard coverage parts. We were able to increase the limits here this year, which is very positive. So a much more robust program for the district. Westchester is the insurer for this coverage part. All right, and the last coverage part that we'll talk about is underground storage tank liability. This is a very small policy for any underground storage tanks that potentially could leak and cause environmental loss. So this would cover the cleanup. It would also cover any EPA fines, penalties for having a leak, anything along those lines. So this is a smaller policy, but it's important with any sort of underground storage tank. Coverage is by Liberty Surplus, which is Iron Shore. Okay, so the program carrier ratings, I've alluded to these as we've talked through the different coverage parts. So the best rating you can have from AM Best, which means you are financially the most stable that the AM Best can possibly give you, is an A++. And I want to point out there are 3 A++ ratings on the carrier side of this. So that's actually, again, extremely impressive. It speaks wonders to Marysville and the ability for us to get insurance from these highly rated insurers. It's, they don't underwrite everybody. There are a lot of declinations out there. So the fact that we've come through with A++, A+, and A ratings, these are superior and excellent ratings. Again, I just think it speaks numbers and speaks really highly of Marysville that we've been able to place the program that's this financially stable. So again, you can look through what the different ratings mean, the different financial categories. A++, A+, superior, A and A- are excellent. We did not have A- on there. We only had A+, and A++. Financial category size, most of them were the highest class of 2 billion or greater. There was one, which I believe is RSUI, that is greater than 1.5 billion. Billion. Yeah, in thousands. Yeah. So that, I mean, that is the program that we put into place. Again, I can deep dive into questions from the group, but really just want to emphasize, number one, the great work that Jody, Jane, Leah, Dr. Robbins, just the group has been so wonderful to work with. And a lot of the information we ask for is extremely intricate and time consuming. And the amount that we've done in the last couple months, from just gathering information, reviewing policies and procedures, planning what we're going to do over the next year from a risk management standpoint. I mean, the insurance is placed. We are good. I can say that we are good. But the work doesn't stop here. I think this is just the beginning. And, you know, over the next couple of years, we're going to be growing, again, an enterprise risk management program. That is our goal, is to have a safety culture, everybody thinking about risk, everybody responsible and owning risk, and just, you know, continuing to work together as partners. And Dr. Robbins, anything else you want me to touch on?
That is for the board, because right now I'm just very, very happy that you're able to come and participate in this board. Are there any other?
I guess not really a question, but more of a comment that I'm really excited about using the resources about improving safety. I feel like that is a plus for MSD, and that I'm just glad we're able to get coverage and work with companies like Beasley. I looked at all that they have to offer, and I think it's a great opportunity for our students and our community to ensure that we have really safe schools and just keep building on that.
Speaking about resources that Beasley has to offer, are you able to go into just a little more detail on that? You called it Presidian, was that what it was?
Presidium.
Can you explain kind of what resources
Sure.
that is?
Yes. So Presidium is essentially a risk management resource surrounding abusive conduct. So it includes policies and procedures that have been implemented in many organizations across the country, across the world, that have had positive impact on those organizations, limiting exposure where you can from a policy and procedure standpoint. They do trainings on looking at behaviors from leadership, so that as leaders, you can see things differently and understand things differently. Unfortunately, I guess some of my background, I worked at Philadelphia insurance companies for 12 years before coming over to the broker side. Philly is one of the largest underwriters of nonprofit insurance. And we focused a lot on risk management with, unfortunately, abusive conduct. It's everywhere, unfortunately. And a big thing that we talked about is change, thought process change, and how do you get people to see what's in front of them in a different way? Because unfortunately, the people who are the bad actors are the most charming of the bunch. So how do you get leaders to start asking questions, to start seeing things differently, and start uncovering some of the bad actors, because they are hiding in sheep's clothing? And it's just, you know, it's something where more training, understanding grooming behaviors, understanding Just in general, what some of these issues have been in the past, understanding past issues in sports. Again, from a policies and procedures standpoint, how do you limit exposure where kids are not having one-on-one exposure with coaches, one-on-one exposure with adults, not driving in teachers' cars, different levels like that. But something as simple as, staying after school in a one-on-one situation with a teacher, it's, you just can't do that anymore. So it's those behaviors that they're talking about out loud, which seems so that seems like a no-brainer, right? But it's not always the case. So more in-depth coaching, policies and procedures, reviewing the policies and procedures that are in place, making recommendations, continuous training. It's not just a one-time thing. I think that's what we're probably going to talk about a lot throughout the next couple of years. Is it's not a one-time and done. It's continuous training. And how do you track who's been trained? And just, what do you do if an incident pops up? And how do you have the best defense for the school district and to take care of the kids? I mean, so it's a lot involved with it. Really, it's just a resource that gives you the best information available so that you can train and utilize policies and procedures that have been built by professionals that specialize in this space. Most of it's built by litigation counsel that have worked these cases for many, many years. So they've been there, they've seen it, they've done that, and they've built out programs like this because it's clearly a need. So
It seems like there's a lot of proactive resources that we're going to be provided, and I understand it helps the insurers bottom line if they don't have to pay out stuff, but at the same time it helps the district ensure a safe, more better environment for our students and staff at the same time. So I'd rather be proactive when it comes to some of these situations than reactive. So
yes.
I appreciate those opportunities that will be afforded.
If you think about it, I mean, I like to think that they do it to take care of the communities. I think we all know that's not always the case. They're doing it to protect their bottom line, like you said. But that's mutually beneficial for everybody because when there aren't claims, that means nobody's getting hurt. That means that people are safe. So if that's what they're trying to get to, you don't enter into this class of business, into education, into nonprofit, into human social service. As an insurer, you don't enter into this space without resources because that is how they protect their bottom line. And it's proven because they are financially stable. They are doing well. And that's why they're in this business. So the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Do you have any questions?
This first I've seen this, so yeah, I need some time to digest it here.
I appreciate. Does any other board members have any other questions?
First of all, thanks for all of the work and putting together the puzzle pieces, so to speak, of all the different kinds of coverage. And I appreciate very much the focus on safety and for students and staff in particular, and the cybersecurity piece also. So as part of putting this package together, there had to be a review of kind of past claims history. And so I guess it's kind of a more global question, but we have coverage, sufficient coverage in all of the right places to handle kind of what typically comes our way, right? Because relatively complex organization, things probably happen every year. We're obviously going to do our best to mitigate those things, but there's sufficient coverage here to basically meet those incidents if they happen.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, moving from a pool structured program into a dedicated program, there are a lot of there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of improved coverages. There's a lot of more robust policy wording. The pricing is also more expensive. So this year with budgeting restraints, we haven't purchased as high of limits that were with the pool. That being said, the pool had a shared structure. So this is a dedicated program. So some of the limit structures that were purchased in a pool program are not relevant to a dedicated program. So this year, I think we've done the best with the budget that we have. And in future years, what we do is, again, this is an annual conversation that we have, where we look to increase limits, we look to improve deductibles, we look to do whatever we can to continue to improve the program. So for first year, I would actually say that, yes, I feel very confident that we put a program in place that would insulate the district from any typical losses. Of course, there's always potential for atypical losses. We dealt with the large loss in 2014. It was $20 million. And that was a big piece of the challenge of the placement of the program. I was working through that. And, I think what we've done is strategic, understanding that that is potential to be out there. But, when we put an deadly weapons program together, an active assailant program together with a $5 million limit and proactive resources, we're getting in front of that. And we're ideally mitigating that from happening again. And if it happens, it will be lessened because of the proactive work that we're going to do because of the resources through the program. So to answer your question, do I want to see huge limits in the program? Absolutely. But where we are right now, I feel very confident in the program structure.
I think that's all the questions that we had as a board. Again, Katie, appreciate you coming out and sharing this with us.
You're welcome.
So,
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
of course. We're going to move on to the 2024-2025 proposed budget board discussion. And I do want to just say real quick for those in attendance, if you're able to pull up the agenda on your phone, I think you might find a new link to a survey or a questionnaire that you have the opportunity to be involved in, and any other questions that might not be answered tonight. If you're stewing on it later tonight or tomorrow, you can use that link and put your unanswered questions in there, and we'll be able to track that as a board and hopefully get you some responses in a timely manner. So it should be on the agenda if you pull it up. Other than that, we'll go ahead and start the presentation.
Good evening. For those I haven't seen, my name is Brandon Bowman. I'm the Executive Director of Finance and Operations for the district. I've been working on a very robust plan in cooperation with our colleagues at OSPI to present a plan that is favorable for the Marysville School District. If we go to the first slide, please. I want to say that this is a very similar presentation than what we saw last week. I have condensed it down to slides that we don't need to discuss due to the change. There's no change in those slides, so we're not going to review all of the presentation. I want to start out by looking at the enrollment trends. Now, this slide didn't change from last week. However, I want to highlight that back in our 2017-2018, we're at 10,400 students. And our 24-25 projected is just over 9,000 students. It's about 1,400 kids in that amount of time. I highlight that. I want to go to our next slide and jump to our 4-year budget projection. So get there as well. So as you can see, we have the 9,000 students in that first line. And I've received feedback that the numbers that we sometimes see from ESD, OSPI, and the ones that we present aren't always the same ones, and that some of those values can be intermixed. So I'm going to show you all the data, and we'll go from there. So we start out with 9,000 kids in BEA. That includes ALE. And then we add in our Running Start, Dropout Reengagement programs, and that gives us a total enrollment of 9,358. That is a change from last week, but again, I'm showing you all of the data. And so whatever data you may look at on your own, you should be able to track to one of those lines. You can see the delta of the prior year going down by 1% from last year, 2.5% in 25-26, and 1% in 26-27, and 1.6% 27-28. We're still in this projected decline in enrollment that affects our funding, our revenues. And then you can look at our fund balance. So this has also changed from last week because we've worked through different cost reductions and cost increases. We are getting very robust insurance. We are paying for that insurance. And so there are some cost increases that are associated to that insurance being taken care of. So this is different from last week. And you can see the numbers as follows. We're projected to enter fund balance this year about 400,000. That's 0.21%. Our goal is to have a 0%, well, to at least have a 0% fund balance. And then in 25-26, we start building up from our fund balance with revenue and expenditures. This does now include the school closure plan that was announced earlier. The last week, I did not show that plan. I wanted to illustrate this is our get to zero plan without any additional school closure activity. And on the topic of school closures, I know this is a very sensitive one. I graduated from Stanwood High School, and when they tore that high school down, even though they replaced it with a new shiny one, it really wasn't the same. It felt really weird because I spent a lot of time in that old band room, not necessarily this new one. And so I get the sentiment that schools are part of our history, and closing schools are not a narrative that I want to lead with, but I need to also look at the fact that our enrollment is going down. 1,400 kids is about 2 schools if you're looking at 600 kids per school. And that's just the reality that we're looking at. So when we look at the school closure plan in detail, we keep that in the mix. As you can see, our revenue and expenditures are pretty much the same as last week. And our ending fund balance does grow to 7 million, 10 million. We're getting closer to the 5 million target that is set by OSBI, but we're not quite there yet. We're looking at other ways that we can to get to that number. This also includes a $1 million contingency for self-insured deductible in layman's terms. So we have to set aside $1 million for that policy. If we don't use that, it goes back into our ending fund balance.
Point of clarification, 5% fund balance is the goal, not 5 million. Just wanted to point of clarification.
If I said 5 million, that needed to be clarified. Yes, thank you. Any questions on the four-year fund projection? All right, we can go to the next slide. So again, we'll go through our general fund balance as it has changed from last week. We're starting with a fund balance of 1.3 million. Our revenues are going to be 198 million. Our expenditures have gone up mainly due to the insurance. So that's going to be just over about 199 million. So our operating budget delta is going to be 847,000. That's going to reduce the balance of our fund balance down to 413,000. Next slide.
I was there for just a quick second. So if I understood the conversation correctly, some of that is just due to premium increase, but the other piece is that we're setting aside $1 million for self-insurance. It sits there to be used should we need it. Hopefully we don't need it. And at the end of the year, that gets added to our ending fund balance, or it looks
Correct. So
potentially
the
a little bit
detail on
closer
that.
to where we thought we were gonna be.
Yeah, so last year we had in the budget $2.2 million for premiums. This year, that's going to be $3.2 million. We had already budgeted 600,000 for that prior to negotiation and attaining the insurance. That actually is going to go up another 400,000 to get to that 3.2. Like I said, it's robust insurance. We need it. We're going to pay for it. And so there's that $1 million. And then there's the other $1 million for the set aside for that deductible. So it's a net hit of $2 million. Next, please. These are our revenue sources I wanted to go through again. We can look at, these have not changed from last week, but our revenue sources are mainly coming from the state. We have a little bit coming from local and federal, and then a little bit from the 4.8 million in the other category. The biggest hit there was a reduction in WOBS revenue. for the other category. But other than that, everything is tracking to pace. You can see the 65% increase in our local funding. That is our levies kicking in. And so our total for revenue is budgeted for a 5.5% increase for the year. Next slide, please. So breakdown of our local revenues. You can see the educational program levy is 85% change, and it's broken out by the fall and spring levies coming in respectively. The local support non-tax, that is also the WOBS revenues. So that program went away. We're not doing it anymore. And that reduces that. Also includes unit reimbursement for subs, unit president, and E-rate. Local, so that gives us a local total of 65% going up. Next slide, please. On the state side, our total revenue is going up by 0.6%, and our apportionment is going down by 0.65%. This is reflecting the enrollment decrease, and it's also acknowledging costs and reimbursements and salary as they go up, benefits and inflation. And then the state special purpose, which covers special education, food service, and transportation, is going up by 3.71%. Next slide, please. Federal revenues, special education, that's reducing at 3.49%, mainly due to enrollment. We're also losing some federal funding in ECAP. There's about 50% there. And then we are out of our ESSER dollars for the year. So our federal revenues are going down by 3.34%. Next slide, please. Expenditures. So we've been doing a lot of work on cost cutting and right sizing the district for what we have in enrollment needs. You can see that regular instruction is going down by 9.4%. There's a big black hole. And get that back up. Okay. Are we good with reading out this one now? Okay, so reading off those slides, we have regular instruction going down, special education and expenditures is going up. Some of that is program based. We've got vocational going up for 2.4%, excuse me. Our title and compensatory programs is going down by 3.7%. Our other instructional, which includes the WOBS expenditures portion, is going down by 25%. Our pool rental and transportation co-op is going up by 2.9%. And then our support services is going up by 2.8%. And this includes an IPD increase offset by service center admin staff reductions and additional furlough days by executive directors. In total, our expenditures are going down by 3.8% from the previous year. We get the next slide, please. So this is a slide that we showed last week. It's had a few changes in the numbers, but these are the planned reductions by category. I won't go through all the digits there, but we're looking at a total reduction package of expenditures from prior year of 7.8 million. Now we're recognizing that our fiscal year starts in September, and we're not going to be able to exercise all of those reductions. So I am conservatively balancing the budget to a 92%. And so we're looking at 7.1 million in reductions. If we go to the next slide, I will show you the detail that's behind that category. I don't know if it's helpful for me to go through every one of these, but some of our big hitters on the plus side, I said were for insurance purposes. We are at the district office, we are reducing an executive director. We're also reducing specialists and analysts, 9.6 FTE headcount. Then we also have, again, additional furlough days for executives and non-executives. Also on the big hitters, we're doing some reclassification of IT items from the general fund to IT capital fund. It's 300,000. We're reducing our materials and supplies by 400,000. And then we are notating the reduction in teaching broken out by category. Our grand total again is $7.8 million in reductions. Again, I would like to estimate 92% of that at 7.1 of actualized reductions. I'll pause here for questions.
Yeah.
I know Craig has a question.
My question is about the categories. Last week when we were presented this, we had categories, counseling, custodial, special ed that were listed as categories. Those categories have disappeared. But that was like over $1.5 million. What happened to those categories? Were they absorbed or what's the story on that?
So going through the exercise of providing more detail, we reclassified some of the categories. I can give you those categories of what they're included. They're still in there. That's just reclassified.
Well, yeah, like, well, where was counseling moved to?
Give me a second. I'll answer the question.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I see the detail, but I don't know which general category that you put it into. Before it was its own separate category last time. Now, is it part of teaching? Is it part of, school? Yeah, I mean, which category did it get put into? Of the ones that are the new categories that are here?
I think Craig's talking about the previous slide.
The previous slide, we have, I'm talking about the general categories, so it'd be slide 12, the previous slide there. And I'm just saying that I'm looking at when I looked at this last night at 10 o'clock when it got sent to me, I was thinking that, okay, these categories on this planned reductions by category are different than the ones we were given a week ago. And so my question is, what happened to the old categories that are no longer there? And what are the new categories that have been added that weren't there last week? I think there's 3 of those in addition as well. Like my question, like the district office administration and district office classified, those are pulled out as separate things. Last week we had just district office / admin support. Is that the same thing, or were they broken out more detail? I'm just confused about what happened to the, it's like I ordered from the menu and then when they brought there's a different menu sort of thing.
So to answer your first question
Yeah.
about where the counselors go, that is lumped into student services.
Okay.
And yeah, you're talking about configuration control on the categories.
Yeah.
And I understand that completely. What we tried to do was scrub the total detail list that I can't provide at 100% detail.
Yeah.
And provide additional categories that would give more of the story. So between the slides 12 and 13, we did change the categories and plan reduction by category, but I wanted to keep a little bit of that configuration control to show.
Okay.
This is similar to what we discussed last week. Because if I would have only given you slide 13, the question would be then what are the categories, right? Does that answer the question?
Close to it, yeah. Again, because custodial was absorbed by operations.
Mhm.
Okay. And sped, the half million for sped was,
So sped can be lumped into teaching. It can be lumped into student services. It's based on the line item.
so spread, okay.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate what you're saying with the configuration control. It was at the request of the board for me to create this higher level detail. And so that's what I was trying to do for you today.
So I appreciate the higher level detail. Just because it gives us a little bit more insight into what's included in those categories. And I think just starting with the A's. So athletics. Slide 13. We have a,
I'm sorry, could I say something really quick? Just like in a classroom, when people are talking, it really, I'm having a hard time concentrating because all I can hear is the side conversations out here. So if we could, if you need side conversations, can you go out there and do it? I'm trying to concentrate.
So coming back to athletics, it looks like it's $60,000 to the plus side. Can we get some clarification of what that looks like? Because I've heard about some reductions and some,
Absolutely. So that is that's the net addition. So we've made reductions in some of the oversight. We have added middle school sports. So, the net total for adding a whole middle school sports program is going to be about, if you will, 60,000, but those are two categories put together. So the reductions that we made with athletic coordinators at buildings, athletic director, reduction in the offer that we have out right now from the current person who held that position, and then adding middle school sports.
Well, I know we're getting kind of off on a
I
tangent
don't want to
here.
get too tight on the.
Well, yeah,
yeah.
but the question is like, so middle school sport, you say bringing back middle school sports, as of last week, that was just cross country and track. Is that still what it is, or have we decided to add, basketball,
Absolutely
volleyball, all
not.
those?
So the value of bringing back middle school sports altogether is just under 150,000. We went ahead and budgeted 150 because I want to be I would rather come out with better than we expected versus say one thing and then overspend. So we've budgeted that at 150, and no, we will be able to stay within that. Bottom line for athletics is 60,000 more though. I think that's what you were asking.
Yeah, I just,
I was just gonna ask a quick follow-up based. kind of tracking there with Craig. So, okay, so we've budgeted 150 for middle school sports. We think we can offer more than track and cross country. For
No,
that.
so 150 is what it will take for us to run students from all three schools getting to participate in those two sports.
Okay,
Just as a point of reference, when we stopped middle school sports, which would have been, was that a year or two ago?
at least 2 years.
That was costing just over $550,000 to run it the way we used to with everything. We did come back with a reduced model with all 4 seasons. We hope to be able to continue to roll that out as we can manage our budget. The one that we originally were going to do was probably closer to 350, but we just knew that that wasn't responsible. So we've gotten down to 150,
Okay.
which is that 2 season. I know this is really important because we want our kids out there.
So not to go into too deep of a dive on, I know we've got a lot to cover, but I just am curious about the conversations around some of that, like were models considered of maybe just 8th graders playing or, and I know that creates issues, right? So I guess I'm just curious about what different options were considered and how we landed on where we're at.
We landed on where we're at because we looked at our $350,000 model and then figured what could we do? We wanted to make sure that we offered sports that were co-ed. So we have a lot of laws that we want to make sure that we're providing equitable opportunities for everyone. And so the one of the main reasons that we went for these sports is that they're co-ed. We can get everybody involved and we don't have to worry about which ones cost more or less. So that would be part of the reason why we went this way. So sometimes it might be those kinds of things that made those decisions. In that middle level model, when we were looking at the middle sports seasons, remember when we got down to the 350, and I don't want to, this can take forever because it's so important, but in that model, we did only have one varsity team. We did not make it 8th grade only, but we made one varsity team and our league, right? All of these things come with huge conversations with our opponents. And they said it would have been okay for us to just create one with, unfortunately, your 15 to 20 top 7th and 8th graders. We didn't just go exclusive 8th grade even at that model. So I would say participation, making sure that it's open to every student that wants to be engaged. Those were our main filters. And then, right, who will play us? Who will be our opponents is a piece we have to do each time we look at that too. So it's kind of a lot of factors.
actually really helpful to hear, though, just all of the considerations, because it's such an important, it's obviously very important to the community and to our kids, so it's helpful to understand some of the, just the different factors that have influenced that. And I don't know if our community partners are still out there and willing to help us with, you know,
Boys and Girls Club and
Boys and Girls Club,
YMCA.
YMCA, basketball, and just maybe some of those other pieces for our kids. And if we haven't had those conversations yet, maybe we could have those conversations.
You bet.
And did you say that this is, is it for all schools? The sports?
This is for the middle, all of the middle schools.
Yes.
Even our students from 10th Street can
Okay.
come over and participate. Absolutely.
Okay.
And we do that for our
And
legacy students also in high school. Would be the similar idea.
And is it one team or is it all different? Like, are they just Marysville now? Or are they Cedar Crest, MMS?
Oh, good question. So we're creating two teams. And right now, and if we have to adjust, we can. Right now, we have it because of transportation. We've got MMS and Totem combined. Sometimes the activities will take place on Totem's campus. Other times they might be on the MMS campus, depending on where the equipment is, what's the easiest way to get around. Those two schools have worked together in the past, it sounds like. So we were trying to come up with a fun little mascot for them. We thought maybe the Griffins, because then you've got the wings and then you have the cat. We were trying to make something, but they'll do it themselves. Those kids are very creative. But they'll get a chance to do that.
But it is not with other middle schools. It's not like Westco.
We are competing with, I was gonna say the North Puget Sound League, but I might be talking from my past, but yes, we are going to be going and competing like we did back in the day, if you will.
Thank you for the clarification about having two teams. I think that makes a lot of sense if we can figure out how to combine schools to deliver a program as cost effectively as possible.
And
I
we
think
made some of
that's-
those decisions based on participation levels the last time we did have athletics. So we took that into account also.
Thank you. That's all I have for athletics.
Are there any other questions on the slide from any of the board members?
Just one general one, and I hate putting Brandon on the spot here because I know he's been working really hard getting thrown into this. It's not really fair because I mean, you've been here 3 weeks and have been thrown into this, and it's you've done a great job, and I know that you worked all through the weekend and everything. My question is, like, last Monday, the reductions were just a shade over 8 million. The information I received last night had it, I know this is a ongoing process, but the information I got last night said reductions of 9.9 million. And now we're 300 grand roughly less than we were last Monday. Did we find some money that we didn't know we had? Did we look at stuff? Because I'm really nervous with the enrollment projection. I don't really feel that that's going to be realistic. I think we're going to have less income, unfortunately, than we're predicting. And to have that situation and then cut even less than we were last week, I'm just kind of curious as to how that came about.
Yeah, so this is a living and breathing document over the
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
And we did identify some additional cost saving measures as a leadership team. The biggest hit is on insurance that was not placed into the slide deck for last week because we did not have that solidified. And
Okay.
it came in at higher values. And so $2 million in excess that wasn't last week's presentation. That gets us from, the 9.9 to the 7. And then some additional items. I agree. It's been moving throughout the week and the weekend. So I wish we could just nail it down and get there, but we are still working to meet this goal from OSPI. And it's a moving target, but this week we have to make that decision of this is going to be our budget going forward. And like I said, our goal is, our mandated goal and shared goal is a 0% fund balance, and we'll get there. I'm confident in that. We're also on the enrollment projections. I mentioned last week that if I were to do this myself, I would have been even more conservative on the enrollment projections. We used a demographer's service and they used their most conservative estimate to put that in there. If you just do straight line trend analysis, I probably would have gone down by 2%. The demographers said, well, our conservative estimate is negative 0.9%. I'm hoping they know that more than I do.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
So looking at multilingual teachers and that reduction, I would like to just get clarification on how we make that cut when we're mandated federally to take care of our multilanguage students that are 37% of our district.
Good evening. I can speak to that. So the way that that cut works is that we're actually making sure that the majority of our teachers are funded appropriately. In the past, there were funds that were allocated from our transitional bilingual instructional program grant that were used to fund our multilingual learning teachers. And in the past, that was met, and then additional funds were provided to increase the amount of teaching time FTE that was available in certain spaces. So the way that those adjustments were made was by looking at the enrollment of multilingual students in each of these, in each of our schools, and making sure that the TVIP allocation aligned with that enrollment. In addition to that, there's an additional grant that we get access to that's going to be used to enhance the FTE that's available at many of our schools, as has been done in the past. So that's one thing we were able to hold on to. And then the other thing that has been considered is looking into the use of other title funds to fund additional staff moving forward. So to make a very long answer short, we're just aligning the staffing to the funds that we are allocated to provide staff for those students.
Just gonna, I'm just gonna repeat part of what I think that I heard, at least in terms of the ML grant, that we're aligning staffing to that grant number. And then we're essentially backfilling from other resources to help provide the services that we need to provide to kids.
Yes, that's correct, with the caveat that because of the reduction in BEA that we have, that's one area where we're trying not to take additional funds because we don't have those additional funds, but we are using other federal and state grant money to continue to do that.
Any more follow-up on that one?
This other federal and state grant funds that we'll be using for ML, does that mean that then we'll be taking those funds away from other title programs that we might have that serves other students who aren't a part of ML but still need that extra help?
That is a very good question, which I can meet with our grants manager to look into a little bit more deeply.
Thank you.
Ian, I've just one last question, I promise. Looking at district office furlough days for non-rep, even though in the budget it's a real small number, my understanding was that those people were not paid from general fund. They were paid primarily from grants. If that includes, like, the liaisons and people like that, is that, am I correct in that, or is that a misunderstanding on my part?
I don't believe that's entirely correct.
Okay.
What we do, Director Harith, is make sure that whatever we use both grant resources and we use BEA. And then we had to make adjustments going forward because our BEA resources just not as bountiful.
Yeah, I was just checking because it seemed to me like if you're not taking money from the general fund, then it wouldn't be equitable to be furloughed because you're not affecting the budget. That didn't seem fair to those people, but that explains it better to me. Thank you. Sorry.
So, a couple more questions. I guess we'll start with the K through class size decision. And I'm curious what our class size is, how they're shaping up. And if you can just kind of walk us through, because I know this was a piece that was called out in our second financial plan, and then it just kind of continues to bubble up in the community about kind of how the analysis looks, right? When we do the analysis on get our class sizes down to get the additional dollars from the state versus not doing that and what the difference is there.
So per contract, K2, we want to keep our class sizes around 21. 3 through 5 is around 26. In doing so, we want to avoid the overload. So anytime we go over that, we are paying more money. Right now in elementary, we have 12 subs starting the school year until we get an idea where our numbers are at. When I looked at numbers this weekend, we're looking pretty good. What happens though is we start school and we get like a kindergarten rush, right? So we want to keep those class sizes small as possible. And we want to have a safeguard in with the subs right now. So we have 12 subs at elementary for the first 2 days, and then we'll take a look at everything and go from there. I'm keeping in touch with principals, basically, after about halfway through the school day, and then at the end of the school day for the first day and the second day. I know secondary, we have 8 subs in. Did you want to talk to that? On how your class sizes are looking at secondary?
So at the secondary right now, our class sizes, they look big, and really when they're building master schedules, they are setting the class size load higher in order to actually even make the system work. Knowing that, we've got to see the whites of their eyes. So they are large. The class sizes are large. Like we said, we have 8 open positions. If we get the numbers that we think, we need to get those people in here. If we get more kids than we think we're supposed to get, well, that's a great problem to have, right? But absolutely, they are staffed big. There could be some kids standing the first couple of days, kind of just trying to see if they're in there. The pressure on the administration and the counselors and the registrars is going to be huge for those first 5 days. It's not a fun way to start a building. From experience, I know that. But we're sticking together. We're trying to communicate. We're trying to support them as much as we can. It's hard.
So I'm sorry, Director Walker, will folks be standing? Or are we gonna pull desks from other classrooms? To
Well,
make
I'll
sure-
tell you actually what we're doing. At least this is the kind of the conversation is, I'm gonna get, Marysville Getchell would be one that would be like that. And, I just talked with the principal. They're, talking about putting like, a rack of chairs in, there's kind of these mini commons for every 5 classrooms. And so that bring up a rack of chairs because it may not be every period of the day. There could be kids sitting like up against the edge of the wall. I mean, they don't really have to stand, although sometimes you think kids are like, can I be one of the ones that stands? Because sitting all day after summer is tough. But there could be that situation, and then they could go into the next period and there's 10 open chairs. That happens. That's pretty drastic, but that's where we're at.
And then what happens is that the counselor balances classes as we actually are able to count the number of students in sections.
Correct. And I won't say any more scary stories about how sometimes we have to make those corrections because it's hard.
So with elementary, 4th and 5th is looking right now pretty big. K2 is looking pretty good. But again, it's a day-to-day until we see the whites of their eyes. We won't know for sure.
So I appreciate you that answered kind of 2 of my questions in one. Certainly interested kind of in the more global picture of how things are shaping up. That's certainly something that folks have been asking about. I think though, between now and Thursday, it would be really helpful to understand again, kind of the K through 3 decision and kind of the analysis, if you will, of, okay, we decided that we couldn't quite get down to that 17 per because it would cost X many dollars more versus where we're at we gave up those additional dollars. Or if it was gonna be, not be, a result in additional dollars for us. That would be great, thank you.
That my 10.
So. Yeah, more.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Now's the time.
I appreciate that. So I appreciate on this list that we have deans back to the classroom. Looks like high school, middle school.
Yeah, that's a really tough decision to make. So, net from BEA, we had a reduction of three, two 1.0s, 2.5s. And, those we're going to go back into the classroom or they're taking on new roles. So, there's a little bit of each building needing to figure out what is going to be best for them. Some of them are reinventing what that role might look like in regards to their school improvement planning and how they can continue to use, because those are TOSAs. Okay, so they are teachers on special assignment, and there's a lot of room within our secondary schools for TOSAs outside of the classroom supporting kids, whether it's social emotional learning or academic learning or re-engagement, self-regulation, all those things. So some are being, the roles are changing, still supporting students, but really focused. So I'm kind of excited about that. I think that that is always good when we're aligning our work, even though I wish we could just add it just as an on top of having BEA funds, but we're taking each school as an individual and how they're working through that.
Thank you. And then I did want to just, acknowledge here that there's significant cuts in the district office and furlough days here for directors and executive directors. That number represents 18 days, is that correct?
Correct, 18 days for executive directors and superintendent.
I know that's hard. I just appreciate your leadership as we work to, find the reductions we need to find. I also see, and this is quick math, sorry, Nancy. I think it's around 32 teachers.
It's 31.
See, okay, see. That's also hard. I'm glad to see we're adding a speech language pathologist. And then on furlough days, is it primarily folks in the district office, or do we have other groups that are also doing some of those things, or?
Right now, it's confined to the district office.
And then last series of questions, at least on this slide. And the question really is, and I've been looking a lot at other districts, just best practices and just ideas and things. Have we looked at? There's a lot of like little things, right, that might, whether it's senior parents don't hate me, but renting out the Angel of the Winds for graduation. One thing one district is doing is changing their student perception survey and doing it in-house. And so I don't know, like if the panorama survey, if it costs us money, how much it costs us, are those some things that we can look at to reduce if needed?
Yes, and yes. Last year, Panorama was paid for by a grant. Those resources aren't available, so we're gonna go to some sort of internal process. And right now, even though I know how folks felt about the range at those commencements a couple of years ago, we're also looking at doing exactly that, going back to having commencement at our large high schools outside. The thing that's also worth noting is as districts go into binding conditions, they're doing the things we've already done. And that's, they're basically copying what we've done.
Right, you're exactly right. I mean, I've looked at several districts what did you do to raise revenue? What did you do to cut expenses? And a lot of the things we did 2 years ago, we did last year. So they're not necessarily available to us, but just looking for ideas, right?
I just want to echo that. Try having a 2020 grad. I mean, we have to make adjustments. I graduated inside Marysville Pilchuck High School's auditorium, or the gym, I mean, the field house, with a class of over 600. So our classes are much smaller than that now. I think it's doable. And that's a very large expense, like little things like that. Obviously, they add up. We're seeing that with this list. So I also want to just say again, I think we had a presentation one time from our foundation. I really think it's important to start maybe trying to figure out a way of publicizing that foundation, getting folks involved there, and utilizing that foundation to help support needs that we have within our school district. So I just want to make that point. Different things, like I heard something about a spaghetti feed, and that's something that Marysville actually used to do every single year during homecoming, and that funding was used for, I don't know if that was the Booster Club or what, but there's just so many opportunities, which I know are volunteer things, but I just wanted to say that in a public, I guess, setting.
I think there's a lot of kind of what some people would call nickel and dime cuts that I think that if they're all added up, I mean that could equal 1 or 2 FTE. I don't know if we consider it, color costs a lot of money to print, and if you talk about a district our size, have we talked about maybe just printing in black and white, or maybe only printing if it's absolutely necessary, and saving on the back end, just or maybe turning off the lights sooner, or turning them on later in the morning. Just small things like that. I think they might seem insignificant, but if it can keep 1 FTE, I think it's worth it. 1 or 2 FTE. So I don't know if we put much thought into those things. I know that's a little more detailed, but I think it's worth looking into. I think it would even be worth looking into if we weren't in this situation. We have to be fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars, and if we're spending on things that aren't really a necessity, then maybe we should start looking at those things as well. So.
I just want to thank you again for providing the detail here. I think it certainly helps me understand better what the decisions have been, and the places where we're, making real cuts. It just is helpful. And then the piece, it's, several of these pieces, but thinking about K-3, if it actually is costing the district money to be able to implement that, I think that's an advocacy piece for us at the state level. If they want us to get, it'd be great to get down to that class size, it'd be great for kids. But if the state's not covering the cost, we also need to know that too and advocate for that funding. My new legislative director.
Thank you. I would say part of the K-3 is balancing if it's more expensive to pay overload or add another teacher. Sometimes is what it comes down to. So.
All right, if we have no more questions on that slide, we can go to the next slide, please. So with every financial plan, there are risks and opportunities. And as Director Harris mentioned, my number one risk is enrollment. If enrollment comes in under those numbers, we have an issue. And I'm not sure what the solution to that issue would be. We're already cutting down to the bone here, and we need to have enrollment come in. So all the help everyone can do to get all their kids there on count day, that'd be great. And fill out all the surveys for free and reduced lunch, because that helps our lap funding, gets that grant higher. And like I said, yeah, I mentioned the 2.1% I probably would have used, but I'm hoping that the 0.9% is correct. Or we actually go to a net zero. That would be great. Opportunities that are in this plan, the sped revenues, safety net funding. We believe that there's 1 to 2 million that we can get. We're going to work on that with my grants manager. That's not guaranteed funding, but that would allow us to use that funding for sped and transition those dollars into our general fund. Sped expenditures. This year we had actuals of 5 million over the state funded amounts. State does not cover all of our sped needs. But this next year we have 24 for 25, we're budgeted at 6 million. So there's about $1 million in increase that may or may not be realized. And also we talked about the insurance. If we don't use that 1 million in the self-insured deductible, that's another million. And another thing that I wanted to mention, that it does not affect the general fund, but I've been here about 3 weeks and I've heard, I don't like the narrative of, cut. I do believe that we need to provide as much value to the kids as we can, and as far as services. We've looked into our grants and our categorical programs, and those are programs that we absolutely cannot overspend. And the policy has been to retain a certain amount of that grant funded capability so we could cover any type of overages. And I've been working with our grants manager and our categorical programs director to see if that was the right amount to hold back. And that was about 85% allocated to our kids. And I believe that through greater oversight of those funds, we can actually increase that allocation to about 95%. What that means is about funding for 7 to 8 paras that we can include. And so I believe that we can manage those funds more appropriately and give those services to our kids. And on the subject of paras, I've heard that from the community quite a bit. And my son actually received services, lap services and a parent. And we were in a situation where his learning was not happening at his grade level. And through the receipt of those services, he turned around like 100%. So this issue is very personal for me. And to be able to allocate funding to increase that service and value to our students is also very important to me. So I'm doing what I can, not just to cut everything out of the budget, but to see where we can provide that value to our kids. And it's a difficult situation, a difficult narrative when you don't have the funding. But in this situation, I believe that through intense management and oversight, we can create some more of that value. Because ultimately, we need to create value and get more kids and families to participate in the Marysville School District so we can turn this quarter.
I'm gonna cut you off just real quick. I know it's past 6:30 and this was scheduled to 6:30. I think this information's important. So if the board doesn't mind, we can extend for another 15 minutes and then we'll reevaluate. And so our new start time for the closed session will be 6:45 and the end time will be 7:45. Is that an issue with any of the other board members?
Well, if it helps, that was my last slide. So
Okay. Then we have time for questions then.
And hello, sorry, in alignment with what you were saying about the grant dollars, is you're saying that we will be able to use some of those, or it's a potential for adding or covering the cost of paras?
Yeah, so it's a potential. I don't want to give you
Yeah.
a number. But we still need to calculate that out.
Okay.
But there is funding that will be able to be allocated that could increase the amount of paras in those programs.
I just want to make a comment that I appreciate that you're looking at it from that perspective of adding value to our students and trying to, you know, think that way. I just appreciate that because it does make a difference. And you do hear from our community that the support staff, they matter. Not that teachers don't either, but I just know that like, you could not operate a school without paras, and that support or liaisons for that matter. So.
I agree. I've tried to step in as a para.
A recess.
Yeah, and it was difficult. And there were three of us out there. So the value that a para brings and uh is kind of insurmountable. So I appreciate that and the fact that you're again repeating what Director Davis said, but looking at it as adding value to our school, making our school valuable for not only attracting highly qualified staff, but also attracting families and attracting students. I think that's important. And I think that there's a lot of valuable programs that Marysville provides currently. But increasing that value, I think, is going to pay dividends over time. So I appreciate you looking at it from that perspective.
Well, yeah, and looking at how cutting as far away from the kids as possible. That's kind of the key thing. And so I appreciate you looking for cuts that aren't people that are in direct contact and you know, custodial and paras and people that are there and making the school safe and a good place for kids to be. So we appreciate you looking for those sort of things.
Are there any other questions from the board? I do, if there aren't any other questions, I just do want to, I think, are we on Zoom? We on Zoom? Okay, so, I don't know if we can put, the link to that in the Zoom chat, but if you do pull up the, tonight's agenda, there should be a location where, a link that you can click on. It says submit questions concerning the budget to the board of directors. You can click on that and submit any questions that were unanswered from tonight, and that way the board can get eyes on it and we can have a system of kind of tracking that input. Where before emails are valuable, but at the end of the day, an email is just an email, and we don't really have a great system of tracking those questions that way. So this is kind of our idea of better tracking concerns from the community and responding in a timely manner. So I encourage you to use that resource that has been provided, and I think it won't. It's not just for the purposes of this work study, but I think if it works well, then this is something that will be kind of more of a permanent feature of our board, just so that we can get better at responding to you folks with the concerns that you have in a timely manner. So I don't know the answer to that question, but I think somebody here does. How long are we keeping the survey open? Jody, do you know?
It doesn't currently have a close date set on it, so I was going to leave it open for
Yeah.
continuous questions through the budget cycle.
Yep.
So
I think that's good. So it'll stay open throughout the remainder of the budget cycle. And then also I think it's a good tool for us to be able to use um, as a permanent feature after board meetings. So I see Mr. Don Hatch, you have your hand raised.
You know, first of all, I want to thank the board and OSBI. You know, but it took a lot of us to make this thing happen. You know, everybody in the audience, it took them, it took everybody. And so we lost those two, school board, the levies that we lost. It was all of us. It wasn't the board of directors that lost those levies. I can point the fingers all the time at everybody else here. And we got some new ones that walked away. And I feel bad that I was on here 16 years, never went to what you're going through now. And I just feel sorry for you guys, what you're going through. But OSPI, I hope it would have helped a little bit more when everything was sliding sideways. But when you lost two levies, that's when it really happened. When you lost two levies. But I hope all of us now, the ones behind me and everybody else, we're looking forward now, just like they say when you're driving a car, that you look at the big windshield, but when you look in the rearview mirror, you don't see very much. It's where we're going forward now. And hopefully we think about, we're gonna work together as a team. And I want everybody to work together as a team. Because what it is some's over here and some's over here and some's behind me and some's in front of me. We don't act like that. We're showing our children what we're doing. That's the negative part of the life when we do things like this. And I want OSBI to think about when they should have come in and slid in and helped us. But I talked to my niece who is on the board here, and says, why can't we get something different than what we're doing? And to make it happen. We just gotta be able to work together as a big unit here. And I went through this, like I said before, and I stood here before and talked to you. In 1975, when we merged two high schools, Marysville and Pilchuck, we lost levies, about 3 levies. And we had to go for fundraisers. We barbecued salmon and cut firewood and sold that. We did a lot of things to get the high school, just Pilchuck and Marysville to play ball before they merged. Then we couldn't be successful enough with that, so they had to merge both high schools. So we've been there and done that. Not well as on the board. But nothing's wrong. This year is a struggle. But let's look forward. Start looking forward and saying, I'm part of this problem. When I look in the mirror in the morning and say, that one in the mirror is part of the problem of this not being very successful in this school district. What am I going to do? I'm going to find out. And that's why I'm up here, to find out. And I help and do some things to help. I always call my children, when I sat up there in the end up there, majority part of the time, I always said, my children, my 11,000 students. I said it every time. One child lost is one too many. And we're losing too many because we're fighting amongst ourselves instead of saying, let's make this happen together. And hopefully the OSBI will help us complete this journey that we're going on right now. And I want to thank the existing board of directors that's on here right now. The job you have is tremendous. And it's a struggle what you're going through. The superintendent as well. And we just have to keep forging forward. But let's don't look back. Let's go ahead forward and start being more successful now than we was yesterday. Before I walked in the door. We got to do that. But I want to thank the school board for what they do and allowing me to speak here this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. We got about 2 more minutes and then we have to go into closed session. So, any of the board members have questions? I see a hand. There it is. Debbie.
I appreciate you guys focusing on student support. So that if we're both focused in that budget, we should all be prioritizing our student learning. I've been looking at last week's financial, and I appreciate Connor, you mentioning every little bit on one FTE. Last week's financial showed an overage in one department, one spending account with $102,000. That will fund the free paraprofessionals for our students. And I hope that those are the things do better. Because that's the priority for us.
Thank you very much. Annie, I see your hand.
So sitting to the budget tonight, one of my concerns is the cuts to cap and special ed. It may seem like it's a very small percentage, but even just small cuts to these programs could be really detrimental to the students that need these programs to get through their education, to go to their school. I, for one, would have been lost without special ed when I was a student. So I want to know, like, I have a question about, like, so it was like 3.45% or something like that. What are we gonna do to ensure that special ed students continue to receive the care that they need? So that they can, receive a, decent education?
Yes, were you gonna speak to that? Yeah, I think we.
And then Courtney, you take sped.
Looks like that from what I see here, sped. That looks like it's just 1.5 FTE.
At our last meeting, we were losing, and please jump in and correct me if I've got this wrong, but I thought we were losing some federal money on ECAP, but that it was getting replaced with local funds to cover the difference, essentially.
So on Thursday, I will bring forward the ECAP grant and AARP from Snohomish County as well to fund the whole ECAP program. So on Thursday, we'll be asking you to approve that. So you'll get that information this week so you can approve it on Thursday. And that will help with some details, I think, around the financing.
Just on this piece, we're losing some federal dollars, that's why we see that big red number.
Correct.
Right. Perfect. I hope that-
Brandon, do you want to confirm that?
I confirm that.
Yep. Thank you.
And because I can no longer see the numbers, I don't know precisely what the numbers are for special education, but I will say that one thing that we've worked really deeply on this summer is making sure that we have a staffing plan that supports the needs of all students, especially our students who are most vulnerable, which is our special ed population. So we've worked really carefully to make sure that we are increasing staff where we need to increase staff, maintaining staff where we need to maintain staff, and any cuts that we make, we tried to make in a way that was not going to impact students, period. And then, so we would look really closely at looking at positions that had not been filled to see if we could continue to not fill those positions as opposed to removing very important positions that are in those places. Because our priority is to make sure that we meet or exceed the needs of all students.
I think in 0.4% number that you saw is a reduction in federal revenue. So what we're expecting to get from the federal government is going to drop by about 3.4%. And when we're talking, you know, when IDEA passed, the federal government said they were going to fund 15%. So I know special ed funding is something that is always on our advocacy list, both at the federal and state levels.
I could be interpreting this incorrectly. But when I look at the expenditure slide, expenditures for special education for 2023, 2024 looks like $34 million. And then for 24, 25 looks like $37 million. It seems like we're going to be spending more on special education.
Yeah, we are
This
spending
year.
more as additional funding was taken away. So we're spending more of the BEA dollars on.
You'll be the last one. We have to jump into this closed session after you.
Which our contract is K3, low class size. And fourth and fifth grade is the higher class size for MEA contract. So I want to address that. I'm also concerned for secondary with the huge class sizes. Let's be realistic, it's huge class sizes, unsafe for science classes with what you were talking about doing. And yes, there will be kids standing. I would like to propose that directors, executive directors, superintendent, probably head down and support help in the buildings for staff. Because they're not gonna have enough people there to support them, and it's gonna be overwhelming. And I'm really upset and angry that we're putting staff in this position. And I know previous superintendents, we've done that, where we've actually had directors, executive directors. And the superintendent actually came out to our school and help support if we needed.
There's an email list already being set up to support. That's been sent out to everybody, I think, in the district admin office to support, just as a FYI.
That's great. I just love to see that actually happen. I know last year when I asked for support at Pinewood, when we had no one, nobody came except for 2 board directors. The other thing I would like to address is the ML situation. I have to be honest, it's persistent tap dancing, and it is not accurate. It is incorrect. The rosters are not correct at the school level. So our staffing will not be correct because we do not have accurate rosters at the school levels, which I have emailed the superintendent about. I have emailed the executive director over ML services about. I have given names. I have reported the fact that we have inaccurate rosters. So we're staffing based on ML rosters that are too low at the school level. We are committing civil rights violations. And I want to see our kids supported. So I'm not sure how we could be cutting ML positions when we don't even have accurate rosters that you're basing this on. And we're not testing students, 370 students that were supposed to be tested this summer that were not correctly screened to see if they qualify for services. We owe those children. They are also, just like our IEP children, they are also a population that deserves to be taken care of and served, and their needs deserve to be served. How long do I need to advocate for these kids? It's been way over a year. I would like to see that happen. And my other question is, who's the executive director? What position has been cut? Where are all the cuts at the admin office? Because I sure don't see it at the district office level.
Thank you very much. Closed session? Right. Thank you, everybody who came out tonight. Again, we'll leave that survey thing open throughout this budget process. Please put your input in. If you have any questions, we'd like to be able to answer them on Monday. So the more questions we get in from you guys, the better prepared we can be on Monday when the budget's presented to the board. So sorry, not Monday, I'm used to Monday meetings here. Thursday, the 29th. So, thank you very much.
Volunteer.
Recording stopped.